Hello, talking for just Anime Curious. My name is RandomSama613, and welcome to Anime Opinions. The summer 2014 anime season is in full swing. I've already done one first impression, and that was of Zankyou-no-Terror, which was a fantastic series. And I'm going to keep going with the star-studded series this season, and I'm going to follow it up with Aldnoah.Zero, which is a 24, I think it's going to be a 24-episode anime series. That is from the creator of Madoka Magica and Psychopaths and a bunch of other fantastic series, Gen Urobuchi. And it's being directed by Aoki. I'd say that he's best known for directing just a little niche anime called Fate/Zero. So his studio and A1 Pictures are doing the animations for this. This is the first series that Troika, Aoki's studio, has actually done full production for. They haven't really done anything else besides this. The music is being done by Hiroyuki Sawano, and it definitely lives up to that. But I'll go into that a little bit more later. So the first thing I'm going to talk about with the series is the animation itself and the animation quality. I'd say that overall it looks good. I wouldn't say it looks amazing. I wouldn't say it looks fantastic. I'd say it looks good. And that's about as far as I'd go. The characters themselves look good. The character designs look very clean. They have a really interesting life to them. Their lips look a little funny, but that's, it's a stylistic choice and I can live with that. I'd say the biggest problem with the character design, though, is that they all look a little bit the same. I have trouble distinguishing characters from each other, especially with all of the school kids. They all look kind of the same to me, like they reuse the basic outline, which is kind of a problem, and I definitely say that detracts from the series itself. I'd say that for the mechs themselves, the mech CG looks alright. I personally prefer hand-drawn, but that's a personal preference because I watched a lot of Gundam growing up, and that was all hand-drawn mecha, and those still look good to this day. I do like the mech design, however, in certain aspects. I'd say that the basic mechs look very, very much like a Veritech from Macross in their giant robot mode. And I'd say they look a lot like that, which I don't mind. It's a relatively generic mech design, but I can live with that. I'm okay with it. I'd say that the Cataphracts, which are the other side of the Conflict's mechs, those look varied and interesting, but they're kind of abstract looking. So that's kind of, a directorial decision and an editing decision, and it works okay, I guess. Next would be, of course, the backgrounds and the still frames, and they all look really good. The backgrounds look relatively varied for it being all basically in an urban environment. I'd say that the still frames in the OP sequence look fantastic. They're all really individually crafted, and they just look really good, and that helps to kind of start to draw you in a little bit. Overall, the animation quality is inconsistent. I'd say that there are some scenes where the animation quality looks really, really good, and everything looks sharp and clean, and there's no animation errors, and it looks good. And then you'll go to another scene, and there's multiple animation errors, there's a ton of inconsistency in how well that they've been doing it. This is my impression after watching the first 3 episodes, actually. And it's inconsistent, is all I can really say about it. It looks good at some points, and it looks not anywhere near as good at other points. And that definitely broke immersion for me. I will say, though, that the battle sequences look really good as well. Even though they're using CG for all the mechs, so the frame rate drops, but it still looks relatively decent, and I'll give them that. It looks decent. It doesn't look great. And then the last thing I'm going to mention, animation-wise, that in the OP sequence, it starts out with the gliding over water with a bridge. And then the bridge shows up near the end of that, and I think that's a direct homage to the opening. I think it's the first opening sequence for Fate/Zero, where they do the exact same thing. And I laughed hysterically when I saw that, because that was definitely Aoki taking some directorial decisions to heart. It was very funny. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the soundtrack and the sound design. Like I said, all the music is being composed by Hiroyuki Sawano, who has done fantastic composition for series that I can't think of right now. But they're always very good. And I think that the OST is really, really solid. It's beaten out by Zankyou-no-Terror for sure, because Yoko Kanno is a goddess when it comes to composing, but Hiroyuki Sawano's no slouch, and this is definitely good work. I really do like the OP a lot, being performed by Calafina, and I happen to really like Calafina most of the time, so I definitely really enjoyed the OP. It was really good. It sets the tone really, really well for the series and gets you really hyped up to watch the next episode. which is definitely important for a mech series that can be a little bit slower in terms of pacing. Now, on the other hand, the ED is nothing particularly special. I will listen to it once and skipped it the other 2 times. I'm probably not going to listen to it. It's okay, nothing special to me. I will also say that the background music and just the mood music for during the battles, during the non-battle sequences, all of it, the background music is fantastic, which is to be expected of Hiroyuki Sawano. It sounds really good, and it really helps to immerse you into the series. I'm going to briefly talk about the characters. I'm not going to talk about any of them in specific because there's a lot of them. And the series flips around between 4 or 5 different perspectives depending upon what's going on. So it's really hard to talk about any character in specific. I'm going to talk about specific groups, though. There's the group of all the school kids who are training to be mech pilots. One of the kids, his sister is one of the instructors. There's also a different instructor who's a lieutenant from the previous war, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. Then there's the flip side with the verse. They're the aliens, essentially. And there's the princess, there's the counts that are on the floating fortresses above Earth, which I'll talk about in a little bit as well. There's Slain, who is an Earth expatriate who works for the verse. And he's actually probably the most interesting character so far. But I'll talk about them in a little bit. So there's a lot going on there. And then there's morons abound on every side. That's basically what caused all the things I'm going to talk about in a little bit, is that there's idiots on both sides. That's all I have to say about the characters. There's just a ton of them. And some of them are interesting, others are not. So the basic plot is what I'm going to mention last. And that is Apollo 17 finds a hypergate on the moon when they land. This hypergate goes to Mars, where they end up meeting the Verse, who are an alien species, and they end up going to war over what's on Mars, which is there's a bunch of different artifacts from thousands of years in the past, and they end up going to war. And there is a ceasefire in 1999 after the Verse fire a weapon that blows up the moon. Yes, again, we blew up the moon. Well, someone blew up the moon. I don't know why the moon always gets to take all of our shit. And there's a ceasefire after that because they basically nuked the ever-living crap out of Japan. The story takes place 15 years after this ceasefire. And the Verse princess is going to visit Earth on a peacekeeping mission because there's been a ceasefire, but there hasn't been anything resembling a peace treaty. The two species are still at war with each other. So the Verse princess is visiting Earth in order to try and forge a peace agreement. So this entire plot screams Macross to me in so many ways. The only Macross series I've really watched, I've watched a little bit of the original Macross, but I've watched Macross.Zero and Macross Frontier, and I know about some of the history in between. This really screams like the relationship between the humans and the Zentradi in the Macross universe. And this really feels really similar to that. It also feels really similar to most of the Gundam kind of idea, the Gundam plot, basically, where it's the people who live in space versus the people who live on Earth, and that generalized thing. So the plot is very generic mecha, specifically realistic mecha, and I don't know that that's a good thing. I don't have a problem with it. I still greatly enjoy it. I've been able to call most of the plot twists so far, and just in the first 3 episodes, nothing's really surprised me. So that's definitely a bad thing. I'm hoping that Gen Urobuchi gets into his stride and kind of picks things up, and that it starts to do something different, because right now it's very similar to every other mecha series I've ever watched. Overall, I'd say if you like mecha series, you should probably be watching Aldnoah.Zero, but it's definitely 50-50 on whether it's going to keep this up. I'll have my final verdict probably in another couple episodes. But what do you guys think of Aldnoah.Zero? Have you watched it already? If you have, please leave a comment down below letting me know what you think about the series. If you liked the video, go ahead and throw me a like. It really helps me out. Lets me know I'm doing something right. If you didn't like the video, please by all means dislike it. But please leave me a comment down below letting me know what you didn't like and what I can improve. I do have another couple of first impressions coming out. Those should be out in the following weeks. But until then, I've been RandomSama613. This has been Anime Opinions. And until then, watch more anime.